Fnatic, the original fan favorites. They will take down Origin.
We don't care about like winning streak. If we play without overconfidence, then for sure we are gonna win.
They're just really good. No, dude, don't say that.
It's not just about being like better players. It's just like being in the right mindset, in the right moment.
But like we don't get like that nervous because it's like OG, the past Fnatic members.
I think they're a pretty strong team, but they cannot face off versus us.
They're for sure the strongest team right now, but they're not unbeatable.
Welcome back to the European LCS. We're coming to you live from Berlin, Germany, where our teams are getting set for battle as we continue week 7 of the summer split. As you can see, the crowd is absolutely hyped for a big day. And earlier we caught a glimpse of everyone outside starting the party early before entering the studio for all of the action that we've got lined up here today. Our awesome graffiti wall, H2K talking some strats before the first game with probably, of course, their mentor and coach telling them what to do in that game. It'll be the first game of the day. There's Pyra and the Fisho helping him out with his tie. Got to make sure those casters look fly to get on the casting desk here today. A little dance there as well. And Rocket concentrated, getting ready on stage, making sure they don't make those mistakes they made yesterday and get a victory here. I'm Evie, your ROC supporter, and with me are James Stress O'Leary, Mitch Kreppel Voorspools, and Trevor Quickshot Henry. We're all ready for a very interesting day here at the European LCS. Let's start by taking a look at the standings, because there are 5 games left to play for each team here in the regular split. Of course, Fnatic still undefeated in that, historic winning streak, 13-0 Origin and H2K in second, and Gambit Giants and the Unicorns of Love tied, and Elements and Rocket still in playoff contention. I do want to talk about Fnatic Somoto. It's starting to sound like a broken record, but they absolutely deserve it. Yesterday versus H2K, it looked like they were out, honestly.
Yeah, in their game against H2K, they actually got behind pretty far level 1 due to that poor invade that's on your screen right now. And then eventually later in the top lane, they made a bold move to come back, and then H2K punished that as well. But even then, even with all those advantages for H2K, their poor draft matched up against Fnatic's just impressive shot calling in the mid game, and especially around the Baron. Baron control was fundamental for Fnatic winning this match. And they got them to 13-0. They're now tying Cloud9 in that record, 13-0 for the regular season win streak. Some people are like, hey, but Cloud9, they won 18 games in a row. Yes, but that's 5 games in playoffs, so we're not really counting those just yet. Fnatic could, you know, smash that win streak and the playoff one altogether, because they're looking strong. They just have 1 game remaining here against Origin today, and if they win that, not only do they confirm that they're the best team in the European LCS, they actually lock in that first place, because they're 2-0 against OG, then 2-0 against H2K, and nobody else is even close to touch them.
No, somebody who's very far away, though, and also needs a win is Copenhagen Wolves, or SK, down at the bottom of the table. The fact that that is the final game of today is actually incredibly important for both teams. Yeah. Copenhagen Wolves beat SK the last time they played, which means they own the current head-to-head. And whoever places in 10th is automatically relegated. They are out of the LCS. They're into the challenger scene. So it's very important for both of these squads, who have historically been with the LCS since its inauguration 3 years ago. And I've definitely got my eyes on that game.
Such an important matchup to close out our 2 days here. And well, aside from that, we're also keeping our eyes on a couple of milestones that a couple of our old schoolers here in the league have well done.
Yeah, record-breaking week, perhaps here in the LCS. Some legends in the mid lane for the European LCS. XPK and Froggen both cracked the 600 kill mark for their career kills here in the LCS. XPK did it in 18 less games though, and still has 1 more kill than Froggen, so maybe we'll see that change. But the most important thing to kind of look at here is they've actually got 100 more kills in roughly the same amount of games over the next best, which is Candy Panda, sat in that 3rd spot.
Also quite impressive, 430 there for Reckless, only 86 games. Impressive board overall. But while Day 1 had some big milestones, it also had its share of big plays. From @Cronai tweeted, "Now that was a wombo combo, a massive cow and a fat man smash into 3 people into a Yasuo ult. GG SK. Here's your LCS big play of the day."
For him. Diamond though, he's gonna go in for the gang and oh! 3-man setup!
was incredible.
Still don't know what to say.
I still haven't picked my jaw up off the floor. It was an exquisite play. It was well executed, well planned, and it continued throughout the whole game. High five, Gambit.
It does kind of sound like a joke when it starts, though. A fat man, a cow, and a cowboy walk into mid lane. Like,
Yeah. What kind of combination is here on the desk? We don't know. We'll find out maybe. Well, remember, you can always nominate your own top tier play by tweeting at LOL Esports and using the hashtag LCSBigPlay. Now, speaking of Twitter, log on today and tell us what have you learned from the teams of the European LCS so far this split, guys?
Don't FF at 20. So for the people out there that playing their solo queue game, when a game looks like it's lost, you know, when it's thrown, when there's nothing you can do, don't FFF. Because
Don't FFF.
yeah, don't FF. Actually, 2 FS only. But like, Fnatic should have lost that game. SK should have probably won like 4 games so far in the split. But you know, throws happen.
Rocket should have won.
You can always come back in the game. So kids, don't surrender. It's really important.
Yeah, listen to Crepo. Now remember to send your responses though at LOL Esports and use the hashtag LCS so we can talk over them later today. But first, we have some games to play. We're gonna start off with ROC versus H2K. Later on, the UOL will face Elements, and our game of the week is Game 4 between #1 Fnatic and 2nd place Origin. Let's see if OG can do something versus that oh-so-dominant Fnatic. But first, we're gonna get down to business and dial in on our very first match of the day between ROC and H2K. Starting off, a look at ROC fighting for a seat at the summer playoffs, and we mentioned it already yesterday. They held a 1.8k gold lead, and actually in their last 8 games where they've held a gold lead at 20 minutes, they've lost 5 of those games. How come those problems are still persisting?
As a team, Rocket are just not resolving their shot calling issues. We continually see them do average to good in the early game, but every time they build up a lead, it just stagnates and falls apart. Rocket do not push their advantages and don't really play the map out very well. I also think when you look at the players, individually they have moments that are great, but they're not consistent enough across the entire team to actually carry them through to a lot of these victories.
Yeah, something we have been looking or keeping an eye on is Nukeduck in that mid lane forever, that prodigy, and it never really came out. It came out for 3 games on Varus, but the difference with the other champions has been too big.
It's been a massive difference. I mean, you look at their wins, he's seemed maybe almost irrelevant off of the Varus. I don't think it's quite that far, but it certainly is a lot to be said. But you take a look at his stats without Varus, they don't really tell the tale of too much defeat, but certainly they don't live up to how Rocket have been playing when the Varus has been there.
Yeah, with the Varus, he's been looking fantastic. And while his stats look all right on first glance, we do have the recollection in our minds of some of those Azir ultimates, for example, that just didn't quite connect. And Nukeduck, he's close, but he can't just get that mark on the game. And whereas he's fantastic mechanical player, because many times in the season he had the rank 1 in solo queue, so he can definitely play the game when he's in his comfort zone, but just hasn't found another comfort pick really to excel. He can match other players, but he needs to excel and transcend that. And that has been the Varus for him to an extent, but not quite another pick just yet.
And very quickly, Rocket have the 2nd longest average game time in the European LCS. They push games late, whether they're winning or losing, but they're not particularly good or adept in the late game. So this is something that as a team, Yamato needs to get his team to resolve if they want to continue picking up wins looking towards playoffs.
Yeah, well, tough game here for them as they're up against H2K, currently in 3rd place. Yesterday versus Fnatic, though, they had an enormous lead, the biggest lead a team has held versus Fnatic in the summer, 1.7k by the 10-minute mark and 4.7k by the 20-minute mark. We all remember what happened. You talked about it, Crepo, and that invade. Everything going so well. So where did it go awry?
So what I liked about H2K's approach to that match was that they realized they couldn't target ban out Huni, for example, so you shouldn't really try that anymore. So they tried to pinch Reignover's pool, put him into a uncomfortable position, because he's kind of the feeding system. Right? He delivers everything towards Huni, towards Febiven in the mid lane, and then tries to set that up. They got ahead, whether due to draft or not, but they got ahead early game, but then they had some weaknesses in their draft later on. They lacked some sieging, they couldn't really close out, and then they made some poor mistakes. And then they match up against a team that is so good in shot calling and Baron control, like Fnatic. The H2K of yore was so good at closing out games. They were this macro-level strategic team that was so good at closing and controlling the map, and we're seeing that less and less the last few weeks.
Well, yeah, I kind of want to keep it on the draft for just a second, because there were more issues than I think than even that. And that was the AD carry pick. Yes, there was Kalista and Sivir and Corki not available, but they then defaulted to Lucian, who 0 and 11 now in the LCS for Lucian. And you can see it reflected in Hjarnen's damage stats. In that game from yesterday, 361 damage per minute. That's his 2nd lowest damage this split when you look at it. And compare it to his average, 614 damage per minute on average. just above half of what he'd normally do. I think there were other optimal picks that they could have picked up. I mean, they've played the Jinx before. We were talking beforehand, Tristana maybe even would have been a pick if they wanted to go for it, but Lucian was what they went on, and it just did not impress.
Yeah, well, we'll see what lessons H2K learned out of that game. The stage is set, so let's kick it over to our casters and load on to the Rift.
Thank you very much, Shox. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Devin Pirate Technics Young. I'm here with Martin DeFicio Linga as we get ready to cover this clash between Rocket and H2K. But before we go, let's get the rundowns. Let's check it out. Rocket is, of course, going to be Steve in the top lane, Jankos in the jungle, Nuke Duck the mid, Rallas the AD carry, support Vander, and, of course, their coach, Yamato Cannon. And this team will have a tough task against H2K. They, of course, are Otawamne in the top lane, Lulex in the jungle, Ryu the mid, Yarnan the AD carry, Kasing the support, and their coach, Brawley.
And two teams with fairly rough games yesterday. They both had a good start. Rocket were winning the laning phase versus Elements. We had, of course, this fantastic early game from H2K. Gifted a few kills maybe from Fnatic. And then we hit the mid game. One was a poor Baron decision from Rocket side that gave a lot of kills over to Elements. And H2K simply started making too many mistakes. I don't think they played Division correctly. They didn't get to set up a split push. And Fnatic, they're so good, they will just punish you for it. And that's
exactly. You can't make a mistake like that against a team like Fnatic. On the other hand, Rocket will see if they're able to cover their holes as we get ready for picks and bans. This time it will be Rocket on the blue side, H2K on the red. Starting off, there is that Gragas ban
First
with
time.
H2K.
First time that Gragas is being banned against Lulex. He's played so far 3 champions, all split long. Rek'Sai, Gragas, and Evelynn.
And that was just once.
Yeah, he's only played Evelynn once. Rek'Sai 6 times and Gragas 6 times. And Rek'Sai, sorry, is the only jungler that's been banned against him. Now Rocket is changing it up a little bit, potentially setting up a first pick Rek'Sai for themselves and try and target towards Lulex, who a lot of people looking back at the game yesterday was Fnatic. They're saying he was out of position very often. He was the guy who got caught out first, which then pulled in the rest of his team. And they also ended up dying, and that was one of the reasons they couldn't close it out. So a lot of people are looking at him, and now Rocket as well, doing exactly the same.
Yeah, I think if there is a weakness, that's one place to hit it. Will they go ahead and first pick the Rek'Sai? We'll have to find out as the bans are still flying through. The Fizz banned away. This is, of course, more targeted at Ryu, who's had a number of games on that. The Azir and the Ryze are banned away too. Steve didn't have the greatest scoreline on that yesterday, but admittedly, he had a lot of attention from Dexter.
That's true. I mean, when you play a Ryze in the top lane, you will get ganked. I mean, that's how it is. You will always get
repeatedly
focused. And they did. They got a few kills on him. Rocket banning away the second jungler. Lulex is mainly playing, so he's going to have to find something new, unless he wants to go back to Evelynn, even though he hasn't played that for multiple weeks. Normally, when you face H2K, you're not banning out the jungler. You're banning out the AD carry. Sivir, Kalista, 2 of the most banned champions against Yarnan, of course, or you're banning out Kasing and his Thresh very often.
This makes me think now that the Nidalee ban comes through that we will probably be seeing a very quickly picked up AD carry. However, there is everything left on the table. No Sivir ban, no Kalista ban. They've been banning Varus versus Nuke Duck, but it is looking like we are going to see the Kalista as it's locked in for Rocket, their preference.
So rarely we see Kalista being open, and whenever she is, we almost always see her getting first pick. The same for Rocket. They trust a lot in Mr. Rallas. He has played it before and done really well. The one game it was only where it was open, but he's an AD carrier. Rocket has been very vocal about how they trust in him, his positioning. They think that as soon as he gets out of the laning phase into team fights, he can really shine. And for him, getting Kalista should also secure a fantastic laning phase.
Certainly should, and we'll have to see what H2K decide to answer with it. No need to necessarily take the Sivir away now, since it's pretty much already going to be going to them by way of that Kalista. The Varus is still up if Nuke Duck wanted to take it, so H2K may think about taking that away. However, doesn't necessarily strike me as something they want to do. Jace is also
seeing as Jace is open as well, but you gotta consider a jungle pick here for Lulex. Just as we talk about it, he hovers over and locks in the Olaf as well, because with 2 bans against him, either Rocket had in mind a third pick that could maybe take away from him. In this case here, he's just going in the first rotation, saying, I need a strong pick and still somewhat of a comfort pick, we must assume, from scrims.
Hoping to channel his inner Reignover. We'll have to see how it goes. We have seen Olaf only really come out from the Fnatic jungler, and H2K wading into new territory here. You've got to be able to deepen your champion pool, though, going forward into playoffs, and what better time to do it than now to practice for that. Let's see what Rocket answer with. There is still a number of power picks up. That Varus is available if Nuke Duck wants to take it.
You also go for the Alistar with your Kalista here. Kalista Alistar lane we've seen very often. So strong in team fights and also in terms of diving these enemy dual lanes here. We obviously haven't seen anything from H2K. We should expect it to be a Thresh pick for Kasing, unless he can get his hand on the Alistar, but looks like Rocket is going to take it away.
Yep, and the Lee Sin too, most likely. This is no surprise for Jankos. With a lot of jungle bans away, he goes back on an old comfort pick. They send it back to H2K side.
And this is something we have seen from Rocket before, where they target out the tier 1 junglers because Jankos is such a good Lee Sin player. They feel like that's a good enough pick for them. They can try and take it away from the other side, and obviously Lulex didn't take anything away from Jankos, so he's going to be more than happy. It's a very skirmish-focused from Rocket here. Decent pick potential coming in, where H2K is already building more towards the big team fight, especially with the Rumble pick in the top lane.
Yeah, and Rocket especially will have a strong and importantly very, very safe bottom lane already between that Kalista and Thresh, the yo-yo combination. So H2K really no sense for them to try to pick up a extremely lane dominant pick.
Should be
Sivir makes perfect sense here, because you just want to start running at the enemy team. The Annie also, there's your team fight right there.
And also because you had the Olaf pick early, you knew that you could always take Sivir in the next rotation. Now that Kalista has been locked in for Rocket, we know these two guys synergize so well together. Speed up that Olaf here. He often goes for Righteous Glory, and nothing is going to stop him from reaching your back line. So H2K building very, very team fight focused and very all in. Olaf is a champion who prefers to only go one way. That's forward. He got to catch that axe and keep throwing it. He doesn't really want to run back.
With that now, H2K, the one thing that they're really lacking from this whole have Olaf run in, start the fight, just continue to run at the enemy team, is a shield, really. And I feel like this can be filled out easily with a Lulu. That's been left open. Ryu, we've known him to play it. You think Rocket maybe is expecting that?
No, I think Rocket is looking more at Jay's pick from Ryu, seeing as H2K is already lined up with magic damage from support, magic damage from your top laner, the Rumble, and at the same time, Jace with his gate also works so extremely well in these high mobility compositions where you have the likes of an Olaf. So I think H2K is looking towards that Jace pick, and if Rocket doesn't respond with any sort of hard engage, that Jace is going to be almost impossible to deal with. So by them taking the Maokai, having potentially a Thresh thrown in, and also Lee Sin, they might feel they have enough to deal with a Jace. So H2K, I mean, I still think Jace is a fantastic pick here.
Yeah, and the Victor now for Nuke Duck. I suppose when you've got this heavy amount of AD, you definitely want to balance it out. They chose to go with the Maokai to add that beefy front line as well as a later game strong tank and something that can deal toe-to-toe with Otoame, but he did lock them into necessarily needing AP mid, so they didn't have Varus or Jace as an option for themselves.
Yeah, and also Victor is just a safe pick. And you take the Victor if you know there's a last pick from the other team and you don't really want to give anything away. He works in a lot of good compositions because of the fact he has wave clear, he has great scaling into the late game, he has a decent laning phase. So Victor is just an overall safe pick. However, I don't think he performs that well against Poke. So in this case, the Jace. But the rest of H2K is run at, you know, Rocket. That's where Victor can shine. He can zone really well with his stun, his ulti as well, with a mass amount of AoE you have to respect. So there is some control there from Rocket. But I really, really, really like H2K's composition here. I love the Jace pick in the end. We talked about how strong it is with these mobility compositions. It adds in an element of poke for them to have good siege, even with the Sivir. Fast pushing abilities, explosive team fights. I like what they've been building.
Yeah, and they have a solid balance of damage too, as you were mentioning earlier. Really do like it myself. It's going to be a tough game for Rocket to really get ahead early. The onus will, I feel, be on them, especially Jankos. He's been, you know, relied on fairly heavily throughout this split for Rocket.
True.
And I feel like that's not going to change anytime soon.
He should be able to have more impact than Lulex in the early game on this Lee Sin here for Jankos. But the rest of the comp again for Rocket, it's a bit of everything. There's some skirmish, but there's a fairly strong team fight because you're Maokai Victor as well. We have to see how they can play it out.
We'll definitely have to see indeed. So now, with all of that, the lineup's locked. Why don't you guys let us know on Twitter who you think is going to come out victorious? Hashtag ROC win or hashtag H2K win, as we're getting ready to start off day number 2 of week number 7 here in Europe. At the LCS, the crowd is getting hyped, and the teams are loading onto the Rift.
All right, let's see what we get from both teams. Cleanse for Nuke Duck, no surprise when you're facing an Annie. It's almost suicide not running it, especially with all the other fantastic champions H2K have to get onto Nuke Duck. He's gonna have a tough game.
Yeah, if they don't accurately protect him.
He really needs to position so well in the back line, otherwise H2K will get him every single time. But the rest of the composition for them, we mentioned how they were most likely expecting the Jace. So like, okay, we need an element of engage. Maokai top lane with Righteous Glory. Still pre-nerfed here on 5.12, which we're playing on. So it is still a strong pick. However, it can get shut down fairly effectively. Don't think that's going to be too big of a problem though for Steve, seeing as he has this Lee Sin. And Jankos is putting more and more attention into the top lane, because they trust in Steve now also to be a bit of a carry in that lane.
He can do, as long as he's not harassed too heavily, of course, on the Maokai as well. We've seen Maokai Rumble matchups. You know, this was something that just some months ago was pretty much the gold standard of matchups, and now it will be no different unless we decide to opt for a lane swap. We'll have to see as H2K throws down the scouting wards and Rocket does the same. Who wants to trade out here, though? Or maybe just get a catch.
Aggressive start here from Odo Amne with his starting item. We have seen Dorn's Blade, Dorn's Shield quite often. Instead, he wants to really rush this Haunting guys, get that early flat penetration against the Maokai pick. So aggressive start for him. Will be H2K swapping to the top lane. You are against a Kalista Thresh lane. It's one of the hardest dual lanes to face. Rocket is even just saying we've warded up everything. We haven't spotted anyone move down, so we can start your Grum and at least do a little bit of counter jungling. And also, the reason they're starting here is to spot if by any chance H2K were moving in to start on the weak side with their own jungle on top lane. They could stop them at the same time.
Looks like we might be in for a good old 4v0 if both teams realize that. And speaking of matchups, we're going to go back all the way to week number 1 when these two met last time. It was Rocket having a very, very rough start to their split. H2K as dominant as ever, and yeah, you can see that in the number differentials. It was, dare we say, a stomp.
Yeah, 2 towers for Rocket and 1 dragon. That's about it. Everything else belonged to H2K in that game. Super, super one-sided, but it was back in week 1. Different patch, it's been a while.
Different teams, really. I mean, the mentality's changed so much since then.
Yeah, I mean, Rocket, the funny thing is, Rocket keeps, you know, having that one great game every week, and you're like, oh, okay, Rocket look pretty strong. Are they getting better now? Are they gonna move up the standings? And then the next day, they fall flat on their face, and you're like, okay, maybe it's back to square one,
or square 0.5. We'll have to see. H2K though, they're the ones that are really starting off this fast tower push, and it's been almost more of a freeze, a very slow push in from Rockat's side. So I feel like they are going off a much slower start, really.
Yeah, H2K is running their, what I will now call the standard swap, where you send your top lane up to fight with the dual lane, or to kill the tower with the dual lane while you jungle. He just stays in the jungle. He's nearby in case you need him, but he's just power farming because Odo Amne then can take down this tower. Notice how H2K as well are letting him just get it in the very end. And then he stays in the lane. He bounces the wave and he stays. So now he's going to get some extra farm, while Steve is being sacrificed a little bit by his own team, because it's Jankos clearing this tower. So Steve has to walk alone up to the lane. If he doesn't get up there fast, Odo Amne might get quite a CS and experience lead, and it can be super difficult for Steve then to get back in the lane.
Right, you know, you normally consider this an even matchup for champions, but when this kind of thing happens, when one team neglects the top and the other team doesn't, also importantly, when one team has Odo Amne, you cannot afford to get behind against somebody who is this strong on this champion. In a team-fighting oriented composition, this is basically going to turn it into a 5v4 if they let it happen.
Yeah, what we have to look at now is that if Odo Amne decides to push out the top lane, there's the potential of a tower dive in the bottom lane. With his teleport, you have a Sivir pushing in and an Annie. Notice the movement from Lulex. He's going down as well. So once this wave is pushed in, if Steve is trying to freeze it, you just push in the bottom lane, you dive him, teleport down, jungle as well, 4v2. Rylas won't be able to do anything, he's going to die. And that's how H2K can try and snowball it. So I want to see what Steve is doing in the top lane as well. You can already see Lulex is here now. Is teleport coming out for Odo Amne? They're setting up for this dive.
They are indeed. Will Rallis realize that there's the teleport after the ward came out? A teleport coming in from Steve, but Rallis is already going down. That's first blood. Steve committed to it. He looks for Kasing, but doesn't find him. Vander comes too late. Odo is caught under the tower. Vander gets revenge.
Very good response from Rocket, but we could see the play here from H2K. Because Rocket didn't leave Steve in the bottom lane after the tower went down, he had to walk top lane. Odo Amne had control of the wave, could recall, and then time this dive here very effectively. It might not be over yet, Pyro.
Yeah, we had that flash, and in comes Jankos now. Lulex is the one who gets hooked. They throw in the sapling, flash away from Lulex, going for him. Jankos wants to finish him off. He's going low, but he gets the kill. Flashes, takes the lantern, the juke. Still alive. Shock blast intercepted by Vander. Steve and
nice play.
Hanging out. Good play. Amazingly played to save it.
Vander setting up everything. Oh, one more!
He's got Kasing in range. He lives though, just barely.
Vander is on fire. He's the guy coming back here, defending the tower, gets a kill. Then he flashes forward, catches another one. Even flays Rio away so he couldn't finish his attack in the hammer form. And in the end, 2 kills for Rocket. This was H2K who set up everything, but Rocket was reading it. They're saying, we're ready. Steve teleported down instantly as well as the dive happened.
I don't know what Vander was eating for breakfast today, but Rocket need to stock more of that in the house as it stands 2-1 to start this one off. Explosive when you consider how it looks like it was just going to be a routine 4v0 to start things off. Not so in this game.
A lot of things have changed. Your teams, once you get a predictable or a standard lane swap, teams start finding, okay, how can we counter it a little bit? Okay, by first of all taking out jungler, keep him in the jungle to farm and not kill the tower. He's going to get an advantage over the enemy jungler. That's one way you can do it. Also, then you push down this lane and you start up this dive in the other lane, obviously in the bot lane in this case, with teleport from the top lane. And that's how you try and snowball some of these swaps here. But you can see both teams were ready for it. I didn't see where Odomne used his flash. Clearly did not use the flash with Vander. And Yanger's fighting again though.
Yeah, checked into Lulex, but Lulex was going pretty low himself. Ryu comes around the side, so does Nuke Duck. Chaos Storm is on. Ryu, he's only got one way to run. Jankos is stunned, but there is going to connect the Sonic Wave. Not going to be able to follow through on the Resonating Strike, and Odomne will barbecue him up for a kill.
A lot of fights here early on. Both supports were roaming with their junglers. They find each other. Quick fight, mid laners join, and then Odomne is moving down. And decent start for him despite dying in that tower dive. He got 2 kills, he's been getting free farm in the lane. You can see how Rocket now realized, okay, the wave is pushing back to Odomne, because once Steve teleported down to the bottom lane, he'd already started pushing the wave up top, so there was a lot of minions going to Odomne. Steve would have been pretty far behind, so now they kept him in the bottom lane. Both teams realizing we gotta make sure these top laners get back into the game, despite being in a lane swap, though it was such a short one. And that's where we see how teams are also adapting, but Rocket has fallen slightly behind in farm when it comes to AD carry and top lane. Only Nuke Dog is doing really well.
Yeah, for H2K, that difference in the top lanes is really those couple of kills. Odomne, he's sitting on 500 more than his lane opponent, so Steve has definitely got some work to do. He's just back to base to go ahead and finish off his Catalyst, the Protector, but this could be a long ride for him. Meanwhile, back to mid, Ryu and Nuke Duck continue to duke it out, but that farm advantage definitely for Nuke Duck, who's been able to catch Ryu out when the two of them have roamed into that river. Vander really starting off a lot of the aggression by just positioning himself in front of everything.
H2K is setting up for a very, well, not a very early, but an early dragon for themselves. You have the AD carry stuck in the top lane, it's not going to do anything. Or instead, just want to 4v0 this tower. Once again, what they can do is just bounce the wave in, give it to Odomne so he gets the lane pushing down. Or they can just take down the tower and then go dragon after, while Steve is stuck at his tier 2 tower, defending these waves, and the AD carry is stuck up in the top lane. So Rocket now has to make a quick decision. Do you want to trade this top tower? Can Steve as well stay alive in the bottom lane? As long as he doesn't go aggressive, he should be okay. But look at H2K, they're moving around for potential dive. Steve needs to back away.
Yeah, he can't afford to defend this even with the shield on him. Now it's just out of range. If he tries to go in, throws a couple saplings. Kazing's got the stun. He's going to go forward, try to make them back off the tower, close to half the health. Now that the mini wave is depleted, and now H2K will ping out for the Baron, or Dragon.
Whole setup again for them is pre-planned. You're saying, okay, we push it in. It's just a Maokai. He's not going to do anything. 4 people. We're going to take first tower. In case Rocket does not send someone back down to defend, in this case, Vander recall, we can push in a second tower. Otherwise, we just go Dragon. And in the end, they just trade towers, but they get that 1 Dragon for themselves. So it's a win-win situation for H2K. Basically, no matter what happened, unless they randomly died 4v1 to Steve.
Creating options for themselves is the mark of a top-tier team, and despite Vander's noble attempt to throw a hook in, lend a hand, H2K do secure Dragon number 1, as you saw earlier, about 6 minutes ahead of schedule for them.
And that is obviously what happens if you swap your AD carry to the top lane. You give up that Dragon control on the bottom lane. H2K took advantage of it. So now 2 towers down for both teams. Very even in gold. And again, if you look at the farm, because Odomne had to run all the way from top lane down to bottom lane, he's now given up quite some CS to Steve, who was just sitting there in the lane farming, but he should be able to catch up with his wave coming in towards him, and with the 2 early kills as well, you can't really complain.
Yeah, a lot of trading back and forth and attempts to outwit the opponent rather than doing a very slower start. One of the things we've accused Rocket of doing. But when you talk about H2K, we usually compare them to, you know, having a chess match, which sounds always so relaxing, like they're just carefully controlling the game. But no, sometimes when you play chess, you can make these trades, throw away a couple of pawns, and hope to grab yourself a queen or a bishop.
Yeah, flip the table if you lose.
Exactly. No matter what, it's always a good choice for H2K, and they're continuing to do that. Slight lead for them, or rather, very even for them. I guess the Dragon really making all the difference at the moment.
We can't look at the 280 carries here, because despite Yana being ahead in CS, if you look at items, he's gone back to base. Fairly unlucky moments for him, because they were trying to, like, you know, speed up this lane swap. They're trying to set up that dive in the bottom lane. So first time he went back, double longsword for him. Either he can now go for Brutalizer into Ghostblade as his second item completed with that, or he can just build up one of them to potential lifesteal for himself. At the same time, he then went back another time, and then he got Pickaxe. Then he got his boots upgrade. He never managed to go back at 1500 gold or 1550 to get that BF sword. Rallis did time that. So effectively in terms of stats right now, Rallis is doing more than fine, even though he is behind. But what H2K is doing so well is using the Sivir also with the early attack speed to just fast push waves over and over and over. And Lulex is always nearby. He's like shattering the lane. No matter where they're pushing, he's around. And now to get another free tower.
Yeah, they get some more damage on Rallis as well. So 2 members in there with Lulex around the side on top of the Olaf insurance policy seems to be paying out. We're hitting the 12-minute mark in the game. H2K gotten a little bit ahead in the gold game. However, there is a tree in the bottom side still pushing the wave into Odoamne.
But what we have seen now, with every single play being made, it's H2K who's starting it. It's H2K saying, we want to be active on the map, we know where to go now, and Rocket is trying to react. They managed to TP in down the bottom lane, get a few kills for it. Then they traded a top tower, lost the Dragon though. They're just getting slightly behind, and now this move on the top lane, no response for Rocket at all, because Jankos, for some reason, trying to set up a play the bottom lane, and that's not going to happen. Now he might die.
Yeah, he could be in some trouble as he gets stunned up. Vander tries to give him a hook to save his life. Not going to happen. Steve teleporting. Odoamne going to follow in. Lulex and Kasing went down, and now the Fate's Call is out. Vander getting thrown. H2K stayed too long.
Rocket again, though. They're reacting to H2K making the plays. Steve joining in a little bit before Odoamne. Odoamne never really managed to do anything. Rocket shouldn't be any objective to gain. Yana is defending this mid tower, but once again, teams are trading all the time. 2 teleports used, kill for each. Rocket is just slightly behind due to that top tower.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you bring up, that they're the ones who aren't making the plays, but they're reacting, and more often than not, they're reacting well. Yes, they gave up Jankos, but they were able to find 2 kills on top of it. And really, what have they given up aside from a tower, a dragon, a couple of kills? They've got most of that back.
We're 30 minutes in. That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot you've been giving up, though, in that tower, and a dragon not really gained a whole lot. The fight is on. H2K making a catch onto Jankos, but we can see as well, Steve is just faster than Odoamne and teleporting in and joining the fight, and Lulex is just caught way behind, so he couldn't really get out. And in the end, H2K flashing away, teleports burned, still have that small advantage.
And Rocket, you know that typically when they've been behind at the 10-20 minute mark or so, they sometimes bodes well for them. So yeah, maybe they're not too worried about this. Dragon is going to be up another minute and a half. Teams decide to have a brief moment of non-aggression, even though there's several H2K members down the bottom side looking to set up on this tower. It's only Steve once again. Vander coming around the side. Can Steve defend this, though? For now, might be able to.
He's got to hold it a little longer because Vander is coming. Rallis moving in as well. So good defense here from Steve. H2K trying another push there. Really trying to utilize Ryu. Here in the mid game, obviously, he hasn't built up any cooldown reduction yet, but he has that Brutalizer, upgraded the tier, so he's going to be fairly strong already. And we keep seeing them just fast pushing in waves. They don't need to fight necessarily. If they can get a pick, they go for it. But otherwise, it's about pushing lanes, it's about pushing towers. And always trying to pull Rocket around the map and wait for Rocket then to make a mistake where they invest maybe 2 or 3 guys to defend 1 tower, and then they might lose something elsewhere on the map. As you can see, H2K always trying to spread out every single side lane and every single minion wave. It's going to push for them. If not, they just go back and reset the whole thing and try it again.
Remember, though, when you're playing these games, waiting for people to make mistakes, what is on the line, too? Rocket, they have such a tough schedule ahead of them to try and make the playoffs and even avoid the relegation zone. But for H2K, they're 1 win away from securing their trip to the playoffs right now. And you've got to think what weighs heavily on one team's mind. I think Rocket's definitely the ones with more to think about.
Yeah, that's for sure. H2K obviously trying to keep even with Origin. Oh, Omnit's going in.
There's a big equalizer, throws down the Zanyas as the Chaos Storm is on, but he gets kicked and dies right in the middle of it. Sivir nowhere to be found as H2K scrambled to move forward. Rocket were the ones taking advantage of that situation.
Yeah, strange engage from H2K. Yana was running from the bottom lane, Lulix was running from the jungle. They weren't even close to the mid lane, and Odo Amne just dives in on his own. Remember, H2K, they're not really running with any peel, they're not running any sort of heavy disengage, so once you are going in, engaging into the fight, you're all inning, like you're not planning on getting back out. Odo Amne, I don't know, maybe he was used to having a Thresh Lantern saving him. In this case, Vanna stole that one away in Champs League.
Not this time, but H2K will secure the Dragon, narrowly defend their mid turret, so despite the kill, Rocket don't get anything else from it.
Might be able to push in a mid tower though. They're setting up another fight. Vander.
Oh, the hook won't connect. Kasing though, lasering down as Nukeduck looks to finish him off. They will just let that one go over to Rales. Meanwhile, Steve twisted advances onto Ryu. There's the death laser. Ryu goes to the skies and goes back to Fountain as Yankos puts a foot in his face.
Rocket is really punishing H2K for some sloppy plays. First they engage from Odo Amne, and now they stay really far up the mid lane despite there's this Fate's Call from Kalista to start a fight. Don't respect it. Everyone else from H2K was split out. One member at top lane, 2 members in the bottom lane. More kills for Rocket. Tower as well. Suddenly really speeding up the game, and it's all because they see openings to punish H2K.
They are seeing those openings, and more importantly, they're taking them. They may be 2 dragons down at this point, Deficio, but they're just about even in every other mark and ahead in the gold game.
Yeah, you're gonna even out those
plays.
dragons super easy. It doesn't matter if you gave up 2 or 3, as long as you can then fight for the next one. If you get a big goal lead instead because you're trading it for object or for towers and kills, you should hit the point where you're stronger anyway. You take that dragon fight, you stop them from reaching number 5, and you are more than fine.
Yeah, the early ones don't mean as much, and this is why we've seen teams not necessarily getting them. We've seen these high averages, and this time it worked out for H2K to take them because there really wasn't any answer from Rocket, but they haven't needed to. And you can see that they're still confident enough to be able to make plays on H2K. For now, they are in the lead.
Yeah, so well played from Rocket, honestly. Waiting out the mistakes of H2K. Early game, fell slightly behind. Now you're starting to see items come in here. Raleigh should be sitting on quite a lot of gold. He's been having that BT for a while now. Nukeduck as well. He's managed to upgrade his item. He's building towards an hourglass by the looks of it. And we know Victor's scaling is fantastic. You always have to respect the damage from the Victor. And that means for H2K, if they keep taking these sloppy fights, Rocket is only going to get stronger and stronger. They have plenty of damage to deal with you.
This is true. Between the Victor and the Kalista, it could get pretty hairy for them. But remember, there's some solid scaling on H2K's side too. Now, H2K looking at trading towers here as they send 3 bottom. They take it out, but up in the top, there's a party of Rocket members unopposed at the moment as Odo Amne, perhaps learning his lesson, is backed off. This is going to be a tier 2 trade.
Look at the mid lane now though. Nukeduck has to be so careful because there's a chance of H2K diving him. They were faster killing that tower and instantly just zone him away. So they will take 2 towers. Whenever H2K are making plays around the map for the towers, they seem to just be 1 step ahead of Rocket. Bot lane was already low, and then you could take that easy move in to a lane that was already pushed. That was the mid lane in this case. And Nukeduck couldn't defend it. He couldn't stay around. He would have been killed by 4 members.
2 for 1 tower trade for H2K, and the proactivity pays off this time. Hitting 20 minutes on the clock. Still a lead for Rocket, but it's not as wide as it was a few moments ago. Baron will hit the board in just a few seconds, but it should be quite a while before these teams start eyeballing that particular objective, especially if you're Rocket.
You're right. Yamato Cannon on the desk after they lost yesterday. I was like, yeah, Baron, not our friend. Not our friend. Two different attempts at Baron yesterday. Both of them didn't work out. Ended up giving a lot of kills over to Elements. It was one of the reasons they lost that mid-game lead they had built up. This game here, smaller lead compared to what they had against Elements.
The way they're getting it too is very different. This has been H2K making plays, Rocket reacting to those plays quite well, getting 2 kills where they've only given up 1, etc., etc. But it's less about them getting ahead in the early game. They're not necessarily preparing for this crazy late game that they tend to try for, even if unsuccessfully. But they do have strong scaling this time around, so it's not a liability either.
Definitely a very strong scaling. I mean, both teams have fairly good scaling. If you look at it, Olaf is obviously gonna outduel at least Sin in the late game very, very easily. Jay scales up fantastic. Sivir will always offer that great utility as well in the late game. At the same time though, for Rocket, you have this massive tank in Vander. You have, of course, as mentioned, the Victor scaling. Nukedog as well decided to just get the death cap. He had enough gold for it, clearly. Delaying a bit the defensive items. He can go Void Staff with the tome he has left as well. And he's getting there. I mean, he's at the point now, if H2K overextends, he can almost one combo a target like Rio. I think, almost, he will be able to take Rio down.
Yeah, and this is why you've got to think that the late game might be more, much more dangerous than it is at the moment, since the death timers are still lower. We're only 21 minutes in. And even though they've got this Sivir composition with the siege from Ryu, H2K may not necessarily want to just run at the enemy team because there's always that risk. Counter engage has been good so far from Rocket.
That's true. I mean, again, this Victor pick, we talk about how it was picked as a blind pick. That's why people like to take Victor in, because he's so safe. Again, he does well in almost every lane matchup. And also, against these engage compositions, as long as there's not insane hard engage to just lock him down and blow him up instantly, he's great. He offers a lot of zone control, he has great burst, and because you can run cleanse, you don't need an offensive summoner. You can deal with the likes of Annie, you can deal with this one hard engage composition or champion, because if you get stunned, you cleanse, you can flash out, or at least cleanse and then blow your entire combo, and you will deal a lot of damage in the fights.
Burst on both sides, but yeah, it's really Nukedog that's been taking it to Ryu right now, and Dragon getting started off by H2K, but there's a lot of Rocket members sitting here. They could contest this one. The hook.
Steve is in base here.
Gonna connect. Steve sitting to see if he wants to send his teleport in. I think they're just gonna give this one up, however. Third Dragon to H2K.
I really would like to see Maokai players get very early home guards. I think that's one of the strongest things about him, especially in the current meta, where you rely so much on his hard engage, and it allows you to set up fights very effectively. Having him diving into the backline, there's no upgraded boots for Steve, so he's putting a lot of value in just getting pure defensive stats, and that's gonna really hurt his teleport plays and his playmaking ability.
Yeah, for now, really only able to utilize the Righteous Glory to get the jump on the enemy team. We'll have to see if that changes, if he decides to prioritize that right now. Still working towards finishing off a number of items, it looks like.
Yeah, Frozen Heart for him. Very, very standard.
Eventually,
obviously.
Spirit Visage for Odawame and Kasing, yeah. But it's going to be a little while before the tree does get a bark that is far worse than its bite. Or is it the other way around?
It's Steve.
It is.
That's all that matters. Good old Steve. Fantastic to join the LCS from week 1. Everyone is just yelling your name.
Yeah.
Everyone. Even though he had such a bad start to the LCS.
He did get focused quite a lot, not just by the audience,
he got
but
so
by every team.
Oh man, I remember his first game, he played Hecarim. No flash, of course, and I think he just got ganked like 5 times in the early game, and he did absolutely nothing. But he's been stepping up his game, getting more used to the stage, and also teams don't put the same focus on poor little Steve as we saw in the start, because he's not even playing Hecarim anymore. Then again, he played Ryze yesterday and got camped, so I guess I'm lying to everyone.
He has some variety at the point, I think, Officio, but let's see if it is going to be enough. Jankos forward hops over the side. Big shock blast hits Nukedog in the face, but they're able to clear the waves away. H2K continuing to try and chip away at this mid tower, but the defense still holds for now.
We see the same though for H2K. It's focus on pushing lanes, pushing down towers. Take the dragon every time it spawns. They haven't gone for any risky fights since they messed up in the mid lane and gave Rocket that slight goal lead. They've been playing it very safe. They know they can play for 5 dragons. They know they can keep this pushing in towers and have wards on the flanks. Steve is not really a threat with these teleports. And we mentioned before, man, no home guards for him. I think that's such a massive mistake, because it's a guaranteed way of getting someone like Rio or even Yanin in these fights here for H2K, or for Rocket. And it's going to be so important for them. They lock down one of these carries and zone them out with your tank. At this point, because we're still in the mid game, and Maokai can do a lot of damage as well to one of these squishy targets. So, not a fan of the lack of home guards.
I think H2K really able to play around this as well, pushing a wave out top after they'd been pushing a bit mid, controlling the waves very effectively, and they're perfectly happy with Rocket not making too many moves here, as it lets them throw their weight around all over the map. 3 Dragons to 0, still that score. They're getting closer and closer to Aspect if this game does drag on.
We might
Rocket have
see-
yet to try and stop them, really.
You might just see Rocket say, no, we want 3 items on Nuke Dog, then we contest the next ring. This is what we mentioned as well, how you can give up the first few dragons as long as you gain something else on the map. Rocket has not been able to really trade anything for dragons, though. They've been giving them up fairly, honestly, for free to H2K almost every single time. So they have to be able to contest the next one. And if they lose that fight, that's where you get into trouble, and that's where you get punished for obviously not getting these dragons in the early game. If you then lose the important fight, and give H2K number 5, even number 4, then the potential number 5 after.
Yarnin, a little bit of damage. Jankos on the chase, backs away. The Shock Blast covers the escape. Still a lot of heavy attention being paid to this mid, which is going to mean Odoamne unabated. On the bottom side, he has his teleport up if he needs to use it. There's nothing to fight over just yet, just some towers and a few wards in the middle to make sure every team has an idea of what's going on. H2K continuing to push without overcommitting to this tower, learning the lessons of the past.
Really playing it so safe. Jankos might look.
Goes for Lulex.
Guy you want.
Not yet. Steve's going to jump on him. Can't be disabled, though. He's in Ragnarok. And that will mean they will have to back away. One ultimate burned from the jungler of H2K.
Yeah. Jankos trying to jump onto Lulex and then see if you could move further and kick back either Ryu or Yanan, but everyone quickly disengaged from H2K. And this is also what you can do when you run Sivir, when you run Jace. You have a lot of mobility to use in case you need it. Obviously, no ulti for Lulex is a big deal in a potential fight, but we see the same. Rocket are sitting defending towers. They don't have any control on the map. If you look at the warding, H2K put up defensive pink wards near the objectives they're setting up for, Dragon and the Baron. And then they have wards on the flanks to see if Rocket is moving in. So there's very few ways for Rocket to engage. They're most likely relying on pulling in...
Oh, like that.
Throwing in Vander, yeah. Let him land a hook or then throw him in with the Kalista.
They
really start the fight.
though.
They're just gonna give this one up here. They're not really able to do anything. Just lack of potential engages from Steve as well.
No defense, and an extended siege pays off for H2K. They grab themselves their 6th tower of the game. On the other hand, Rocket have been able to push a few sideways back. They've built one up in the top side, which means Odoamne is going to have to go and defend and clear that one back out. But still, Rocket, as you said before, they're not the ones making the proactive plays. Yes, they can push it sideways, but what are they doing with it? So far, nothing.
Oh yeah, you can't do anything if you're pushed all the way down to your own base. That wave is just free farm for Odoamne. It's basically saying, okay, we can keep pushing for another 30 seconds, then I'm going to go catch this massive wave. Thank you very much. And man, I'm going to go down and be ready to fight for the next dragon. Rocket is now finally moving in. Trying to set up a bit of vision before it even spawns, but it's still way too late because they've just been pushed back. Haven't been able to do anything. Steve, please, go back in base, sit with your home guards, and set up an engage where you get to the back line of H2K. Otherwise, they can just keep kiting around. Just land a poke from Ryu as well.
And Rocket, they had pretty much everything here, everyone here, to clear out the Skull of Crab, to clear out the vision. They immediately give it up the moment H2K shows 3 members. And now, complete control once again for H2K. They don't need to take the dragon just yet. Rocket are moving mid, but they can't fully commit to this.
No, basically what Rocket is doing is, by them pushing in the mid lane, they force H2K to step away from the dragon and be ready to defend that mid lane. So Rocket can't just push in for a tower. That's what you do when you want to force people out of the river, if you've already lost control of it. But you can see how H2K only sent in a few members and then the rest stayed around. So they still have good warding placed. Look for Ryu and the poke he can land. And let's see how Rocket can start a fight. I mean, we're looking at a hook, we're looking at flash engage, maybe from Steve, or if Jankos can go in and kick someone back. Otherwise, this poke is just going to continue. They're going to push the mid lane again. That's the only lane they're pushing at the moment, trying to force H2K. You can see how Ryu is always moving in around it. Can he clear the wave and then step back? But Rocket is simply not able to do anything in terms of starting the fight unless H2K mispositions.
So we have the extended Dragon Dance, and it goes far outside of the range of the dragon itself. Rocket, even though they're grouped up here, they can't afford to get involved. There's the Shock Blast damage, there's the threat of the Annie, Sivir on the hunt, every ultimate is available, every member is here, and they're not pulling the trigger.
No, and you can't fight in a choke point either against the Rumble. So very difficult for Rocket in how they want to set up the fight. Also the fact that the 2 side lanes are pushing for H2K, so they're starting it now. There's Steve!
Yep, is spell shielded, there goes the equalizer, Lulex gets push back in, but Steve is the one on the front line, and he's burning away. Kasing looking for a Vander now. They're doing way too much damage as Jankos goes down. Ottawamne targeted out, but he throws on the Zanya's Hourglass. Might be enough to get away. Shield is up. They are going to catch Rales, stunned up. He's going to get the Lantern to safety, but Jankos and Ottawamne all went down in the carnage. Dragon number 4, however, will be secured by H2K.
Yeah, Rocket simply not doing themselves any favors in how they want to start the fight. It was too easy to predict. You started flash engage, Yanni just popped his spell shield and he walked out. He didn't manage to connect anything else from Rocket. They're simply not able to properly start the fights. And now that they have given up so many dragons, H2K can start forcing them. Look at the spell shield from Yanni. Beautiful reaction. He also just predicting the engage. Lulex is stuck in the pit. He stays back here to get the first kill. Rodamne will go down though in the very end of the fight because Dukdog and Rales are left untouched. Due to the fact that HQ were kiting back, they were not the ones hard engaging this time. After securing their 1 kill, well, yeah, it's a 1-1, but you lose a dragon. And it's really been the story of the game. Now Rocket is trying to trade even, then they lose something else.
So after all of that, we sit at 31.5 minutes into the game. The gold is still as close as it ever was between these two, but this is the big difference here. 4 dragons to none, 6 towers to 2. Finally, however, Steve learned the lesson.
Yeah, home guards completed.
Home guards are good.
Dragon fight too late.
Imagine if he had it before.
That could be what Rocket needs for the next one. H2K now can continue just to play it out super safe. You don't have to make any risky plays. You can start setting up a few baits around the Baron, but don't necessarily start it and risk Rocket getting a good fight against you. Instead, play around Ryu's poke over and over and over, and then wait for number 5 as well in terms of dragons. Rocket though, moving in towards his tier 2. H2K is slightly out of position. Kasing trying to pose a little bit of a threat by just walking in, looking confident.
Got to avoid those shot blasts though. Ryu just narrowly clips Rales, and you can see the damage that he's starting to do as he is stacking himself up. Hadn't had the easiest lane phase, but he's still playing Jace. You have to respect that. H2K are able to defend for now.
For now though, Rocket will be able to get more damage on the tower.
Might finish it.
H2K need Jan in here to have great fast wave clear. Ryu needs to like position himself on the side of the minions to really shock blast them. Can be fairly difficult. So Yana was the guy they were waiting for. Defending for now. Expecting H2K to look for a fight though. If Rocket stays around, there's no reason not to. They're going in.
Go for it. They catch Rales and they blow him up. Yarden with the killing spree as Lulex in the front with the Ragnarok on. Turns tail and runs around, flashing over the wall to bait Jankos and Steve. They hit and run and take down the AD carry.
The camera could barely follow. Move down, pop Sivir ulti. Instantly. You just have to engage Righteous Glory as well.
Steve had to teleport for that too. He was bot side, pushing tower. Teleport gain.
This is what HK wants to do with their composition. Haven't gotten to see it too often in this game. The last Dragon fight, they were forced to disengage and kite back, but this is what they can do. Rales, he's gonna need a QSS very soon.
He can't hop backwards fast enough. Ottawamne tangles with the Grom. Should be able to push back Steve quite easily. So H2K doing what they need to now to get themselves just slowly, ever so much ahead and catch Rocket members out with the superior mobility of their composition.
We saw H2K yesterday against Fnatic. Get a big lead in the early game. And then honestly, almost play cocky in the way. They were just invading into the jungle. They're not respecting the pick potential of Fnatic. They're not respecting the 5-on-5 the 5-on-5 team fight with the big power spike of Jace Corki that Fnatic had, and they got caught out. Lost the lead, they had lost the game. This one here had a few misplays if we go 15 minutes back into this game here. But then you're just missing, okay, no more playing around. Now we're super safe. And everything ever since has been fully controlled by H2K. This Rocket trying to be, you know, a little bit active, but they're not very good at it. They're always trying to rely on H2K making a play, but if it's a flash and he tippers, what's the counter play really for Rocket? You can never set up a teleport then with your tank.
Yeah, there's just not enough time to be able to do it. The cast animation alone takes too long. And H2K, you know, they're learning the lessons, not just from yesterday, but from the few mistakes they have made throughout this split. And against a team like Rocket, you'd think in theory that's going to be enough to take home this victory, but it still looks even on paper, with the exception of those dragons. Rocket are still making moves. As you said, they've not all been successful, but they haven't rolled over and given up.
No. And now they need to set up for this dragon. However, massive lack of ping wards in my opinion. You're setting up for the crucial fight that might determine the entire game. At the moment, you have one ping ward on the map. You're still sitting on a health potion on your jungler at this point here. You're sitting on Doran's ring, Doran's blade. Not very effective item 35 minutes in, and you're gonna need that if you want to set up a proper fight where you don't want to risk H2K, just getting a Tibbers engage or Ryu sitting there landing poke. You don't really have any chance of dodging and you lose the fight and lose the dragon. Rocket should have recalled like 1.5 minutes ago. Bought the items needed for it, bought the pink wards, moved over to this dragon and started setting it up. Because right now H2K can even just take it slow because they might just be able to take a Baron. If Rocket is fully investing everything onto one thing, you just go and take the Baron if you're H2K. And there's no TP for Steve. It was used before on nothing. 3 pink wards now for H2K. They're setting up for it. I'm not sure how Rocket is going to fight this one. Flash engage from Steve is going to be needed.
He has to immediately go and move towards the dragon side. He has to give up on farming the top wave as it was pushing in. You've got Yarnin pushing on the bottom side. He can rejoin his team quite easily if he needs to. And H2K, they're this close to securing dragon number 5. It's almost been uncontested this game, with the exception of that one fight that went awry for Rocket. It was a 1-for-1, but the dragon was given up. Rocket don't have control of this river. They need to act fast.
Started the dragon already here. Rocket is going in.
Hook onto Lulex. Is that the one you want, though? Equalizer's down.
They're
gonna steal it. Jankos manages to stop Aspect. Can they win the fight, though? Lulex going down, and Oda might be getting out. Kasing getting chucked, but it's Rellis who goes down. Jankos, Rellis both down, but Lulex had already melted. Kasing picks up a double kill there. They look for Steve. Can they find him? Shut down. Nuke Duck manages to take out Yarnin, and in comes Steve to his doom. Oda one bit of sapling, double kill sapling. How about a touchdown there? Nuke Duck and Kasing, the only ones on the map now.
Come on, Kasing, fight him. You have Tibbers. Be a man.
Tibbers is going in, but Nuke Duck's going in faster. Kasing, there's lasers, there's a flash. Nuke Duck gives up on this one.
Oh, he killed the Tibbers though. 50 gold. Worth it.
Oh, that was
what a close fight though. Jankers steals the dragon away. Let's see it again. Let's see everything again. Okay, so H2K, they start the dragon. They want to force Rocket to move down and start fighting them. First onto Lulex, not the target you want for Rocket, but look at Jankers here. Steals it, and then the fight itself. Now H2K are not able to set up any engage. They have to kite back at first. Not necessarily what they want to do. So they can't get onto the chaos before now. Beautiful setup. Radis goes down, but Nuke Duck is still alive. We talked about the cleanse earlier, how important it is versus Annie. And him and Steve, of course, wait for the sapling. Wait for the sapling. Where is it? It's running. Look at that bad boy. Oh, it's another double sapling, man. Double sapling. What a setup.
The unseen sapling is the deadliest. Meanwhile, though, back to the game. The Baron is started as Rocket look to try and polish this one off. But visions of the past from yesterday. Will it be taken away this time? It's not going to be enough people there, and the Baron goes down, secured this time by Rocket. Can they finish the fight, however? Yarnin, Sonic Wave, Resonating Strike, but Yarnin makes the outplay before falling to the Death Laser. However, 3-for-1 for Rocket, and the Baron secured.
The last few fights, Nuke Duck is staying alive in the back here. He didn't die yet. 7 kills, 6 assists for him, and he's dealing so much damage on this Victor here. He's scaled into late game, no defensive items, he doesn't need that. And H2K is simply not able to lock him down. They tried to obviously stop the Baron as well. They've been losing now.
Quite a lot.
A lot of the base. I mean,
it's in shambles already.
Look at how many minions we have here. Rocket can just keep pushing.
There's no way to stop this. 4 seconds on Lulex. They're going to go straight for the Nexus starts. Kasing gets a 3-man Tibbers, but it doesn't matter at this point. Up comes Lulex, but one Nexus turret is down. The second is sure to follow. Lulex can only hope to get a kill or two. The box is down to slow him down. They've cut the hook, focusing on the Nexus. They'll be able to do this. Not even 40 minutes, and Rocket have taken out H2K.
What a turnaround from Rocket here. 4 dragons to 0. It looked so bad. No telebo for Steve. How were they gonna take this dragon? How are they gonna win that fight? They engage, and Jankos, he steals away the dragon from Lulex. Fight is on. Nuke Duck with the cleanse. He stays alive in the backline. He deals so much damage. Sapling touchdown. We had everything here. Instant over to a Baron. Same deal. H2K is trying to stop the Baron itself instead of Nuke Duck. Ryu as well gets caught out in the middle of the fight, goes down, and Rocket instantly turned everything around. We talked about how both teams had some good scaling here on certain champions. Nuke Duck was one of them. What a performance on this Victor.
Right there in the name, man. This time, Team Rocket, they blasted off to the finish. Able to take a fantastic series of fights. And H2K, 1, 2, 3 mistakes. That's all it took.
And let's just talk about how important this win is, because we looked at the remaining schedule for these teams here fighting for the playoff spots and obviously fighting to avoid the promotion tournament down the bottom of the standings. Rocket had the toughest one. They had H2K, they had Origin, and they have Fnatic left.
And they'd already lost to Elements
yesterday. The 3 top teams, and then lose yesterday to Elements, one of the games they had to win. Well, I mean, if you can beat H2K, you're right back where you started, I guess, and not one of the games we expected them to win. One of the games they had to win, though, after losing to Elements yesterday, if they want to keep fighting for these playoff spots.
Yeah, and with that win, very important for them to move up the standings and keep themselves alive for the playoffs. I mean, how did that game end that way? It's just insane.
I completely written them off. When it came to that last Dragon fight, I was like, okay, there's no TP. How are they going to start this one properly? The fact that H2K starts the Dragon allows Rocket to engage, and we talk about it so many times. Look at the compositions here. Annie, you need to get into that backline with your tippers. You can't lock down a target here. You have Civils, you have all of us to charge in as well and take down one of these carries. Because H2K was starting Dragon and put focus on the Dragon itself, it allowed Rocket to engage onto them. Last time that happened as well, Rocket came out, or at least even. Nuke Dog stays alive, deals so much damage. Steve is tanking for days. All they need was the fact that Rocket could not get to the backline. Then they can win the fights. Nuke Dog with the build, Lichbane 4th item, you know, no defensive items. We didn't even get to see how the Baron started. They just went straight to Baron. We got out of the replay. Baron was almost dead.
And they secured it.
And they secured it.
This time.
H2K pile onto the Baron. They're like, tunnel on the Baron. Okay, we got to get the Baron down. Forget about the carry standing outside. Even lose the Smite War again.
And they lost 1-2 members immediately in the aftermath.
Yeah, like Ryu was standing in the middle of the fight, just dead.
Instantly. I mean, Yarnan was able to finish off Jankos, like crazy outplaying him, but it didn't matter because then immediately Nuke Duck just lasered him down. I mean, there was so much damage on that Victor as well. Nuke Duck was in the perfect position for almost every one of those fights, and they couldn't focus him because they were so prioritized on those objectives and the front line.
When we go back and rewatch this game here, we need to look at Ryu and his position in these fights, because he went down very often, very early. Yarnan stayed alive for a long time, but maybe the analyst desk will talk about it. Let's just toss it over to him, because we have talked enough.
Yeah, go ahead, take it away, guys. Explosive finish indeed.
Thank you so much. We are joined here by Yamato, Cannon, and Nukedek in that game. Well, the Fisher actually said that he had written you guys off, and honestly, we here too, when it came to 4 Dragons for H2K, a big advantage. So, Yamato, in the end, how much of a surprise was it that it all turned so quickly?
Well, the thing is, I felt like comp-wise, what we had to do was just initiate, and we needed to get creative, because H2K played the game smart with the warding, but we had to get creative with the home guard earlier. And then, like, the Janko steal on Dragon was just key. That's just basically it.
So yeah, I definitely agree that the lack of home guards put you guys in an awkward position. But going back to the draft, were you guys, after having seen how the game played out, were you still happy with your draft? And what was your opinion of H2K's draft? Because yesterday, it was kind of sloppy from them. But today, I feel like they had a solid pick with that Olaf. Is that something that surprised you guys, perhaps?
Usually when I do my drafts, is basically I look at the strengths of each champion and make sure we have a good draft. And usually if the enemy team doesn't screw up, it kind of settles down in that way. But it's also important to know the fact that we picked a Maokai into the Jace simply because the Righteous Glory is so good into it. So I feel draft-wise it was very, very even, and that's something I expect from H2K.
And yeah, you ended up playing that mid lane matchup, Victor into Jace. It seems to me that in the early game it goes well for Victor, but then later you have issues wave clearing because of the constant poke. How does that matchup play out early for you, and what do you think is so great about Victor?
It's basically what you said. Early game Victor wins, but he cannot deal with Jace poke, so you just have to try to kill the wave as fast as possible and just move away from the poke, and then once you reach like 3 items on Victor again, you are way stronger than Jace, because Jace like really falls off late now after like the double in nerf.
Yeah, it definitely hit that extreme power spike, and it hit at the right time too, because you guys were contesting 5th Dragon. Let's get that replay up on the screen, which was basically make or break for you guys, and luckily it was make. We can run the clip. Nukedog, can you run us through this one?
Alright, so it's 5th Drake, and we are just looking for an opening to engage. So under flash hooks. We're really focusing on trying to get to Drake, because we know that we are stronger in a 5v5, so all we need to do is make sure they don't have 5th Drake, and then fight.
I agree completely, simply because I think like the Janko steal was just so key in everything, and I felt like Vander in this situation became a bit too eager to engage, simply because in this game it was basically Steve that had to go in with the Righteous Glory, and Vander just felt the need to do it, and I think it worked out perfectly.
Look at that sapling.
Those saplings.
And then the sapling, yeah.
The Kobe Bryant Maokai.
Completely dunked. But this is something, honestly, what a lot of people have critiqued Rocket for the mid to late game shot calling. You say it right there, maybe Steve should have gone in, maybe those home guards should have came in earlier, and then, yeah, you guys managed to bring it back, but still it was relatively slow. Do you think that critique is fair towards the team, and are you guys actively working on fixing that, or?
Well, I have to say, in this particular game, Baron was our friend, luckily, not like yesterday.
Yeah.
But in this game, I felt we prepared very poorly for every dragon. We always came out like in a position, oh, dragon is spawning, let's just take a look and watch a cinema called Dragon. We always just stand behind her and do nothing. When in reality, we should prepare before, and we should make use of the Maokai Righteous Glory TP kind of engage, which that is my critique from my point of view.
All right.
And I agree with them.
Yukto, anything to add?
No, just the late game shot calling haven't been that good for us the whole split. So yeah, it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on.
I know how that feels, man. Don't worry about it.
Well, at least you got a win on the board here versus H2K, so that's all good. Congratulations. Great game from you guys.
Thank you.
We're one game in, but there's plenty more LCS coming your way in just a few minutes as Gambit and Giants Gaming battle it out for 4th place. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
What do we do today, Janko?
They're my dogs.
We win. We take responsibility. We kill them. We take responsibility. And then we kill them.
Lulex is the one who gets hooked. They throw in the sapling. Flash away from Lulex. Going for him. Jankos wants to finish him off. He's going low, but he gets the kill. Kasing looking for a Vander now. They're doing way too much damage as Jankos goes down. Oduwatne targeted out, but he throws on the Zanya's Hourglass.
I stun you. Good. I'm low. I'm out of the fight. We're winning. Good. Hey, Victor. Go for Victor after, okay? I'm on Jace.
Kill Rumble. Severe solo. Nice. Go. Top.
Someone.
Top. We can end the game.